Hey, everybody, this is Ed.
And this is Kara.
And this is your day's dumpster fire. Yay, we did it.
We got it to work.
The first thing we did when we logged on was have audio issues.
As per usual. It's fine.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a mandatory thing to have in any episode that we do is like we hop on and nothing works.
Yep. Even if you don't touch any setting at all, any knob.
Yeah.
Or volume key or whatever.
Yeah, and then like even though we had just fired up the computers to hop on and do our recording, something doesn't work, and then we have to end up like restarting the computer anyways.
Yes.
Even though we just fired it up.
Yes, facts.
And then of course me, like I'm like yelling into a microphone and you still can't hear me. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I forgot to turn on my phantom power because some mics out there require an extra 48 volts to run like a cloud lifter or a fed head or something like that to get that extra gain out. And I forgot
that'll do it. That'll do it.
Yeah, if you don't have that 48 volts turned on, nothing works. Like you're just silent.
It explains why my test YouTube video is extremely loud in my ears, but I couldn't hear you. Anyway,
so yeah, well, we got an interesting one here. You as audience may know, like we've been on a little bit of a French Revolution kick. I know we have our transatlantic telegram episode in there, but Kara, myself, and Deja, we kind of like wanted to do a multi-part series on the French Revolution and how it was just like kind of like one dumpster fire after another. And Carrie, you did that 2-parter on King Louis the 16th.
Yeah,
that guy was that was something else. I'm like, how is a dumpster fire about a guy getting his head cut off? Everything that led up to
special.
It. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. He's a special kind of special. And then we also have his wife, Marie Antoinette. She got implicated.
She got screwed.
Yeah. History really did not do her justice. So she had a bit of a gambling problem, but not enough to sink the entire nation into debt. And she had absolutely nothing to do with the nation being horribly in debt. But
no, that was Louis and Louis and Louis.
And his predecessors.
Yeah, Louis and Louis and Louis.
Yeah, Louis 1, Louis 2, and Louis 3.
Exactly.
So yeah, we're Deja's been working on that one, but she's been I don't know, dealing with
stuff.
Yeah, it's like like adulthood attacks people differently at different times, and like right now Kara and I are like smooth sailing, and then Deja's got all the life happening to her. And then like once she gets all that resolved, then one of us will get hit again.
Yeah. It's just a cycle. It's fine.
Yeah.
We're working on it.
It just makes for more content for the show. So we're going to skip her. We'll eventually get to Marie Antoinette just because she is a very fascinating figure. But I'm going to talk about Napoleon. And this is more than likely going to be a 2-parter. And what's so ironic about Napoleon is that when you look at, what sparked the French Revolution and how everybody was like, hey, we just want a constitutional monarchy. But then once they couldn't even get that through King Louis's head and make that stick, then they just got pissed off and they're like, okay, we don't want a monarch. We don't want a king. We don't want an emperor. We don't want one person in charge of everything. All of that, right? if you had a big fancy name or a big fancy title, or you just had a lot of money, yeah, you were probably get your head cut off. And they just wanted average people running the show. And it turns out that when you have just average people running a country, things don't go as smoothly as you would think. And then
You mean we don't need all the mathematicians and economists and war generals to plan things for the country?
we need their input.
At the very least.
That this was more like, we look at like Robespierre, right? That guy, he just used that guillotine for everything. And it got to the point where even if you started to speak up against the convention or this new government they're trying to build, then you would get your head cut off.
Yeah, that 10 months was pretty rough.
Yeah. And it eventually resulted in Robespierre. He got like shot in the face or something like that. Well, he tried to take his own life.
No, Robespierre was beheaded by guillotine.
Yes, but he had a blown out jaw because he tried to take his own life, but he missed.
Yeah.
And that didn't kill him, so then they beheaded him.
Fun times.
Yeah, good times. So like what's so ironic or so interesting about all of this is how France went from having a king to not wanting a king to having a king all over again to then getting rid of that king and then basically going back to a monarchy all over. It's a full revolution. I can now see why they call it the French Revolution.
I guess.
That's very cyclical, kind of like our lives. So yeah, Napoleon was a fascinating figure because he kind of stepped in and he just looked at how things were going in France with the Directory and how like nothing was getting done. And even though he was like a newly minted general, he just had a knack of just getting things done. And he had a knack of pushing reforms and all sorts of stuff. And it resulted in him basically becoming a monarch, but he was very careful about his titles. So he never called himself a king. He would prefer the term consul, right? And then instead of having a directory or any sort of anything pertaining towards having one person in charge, he set up a consulate where you would have 3 consuls. And then he was like consul for life. And then he kind of just made himself emperor. So like he never really, like, you really can't say he was a monarch, but he had every other title under the sun going that he basically put together. That fine, he wasn't a monarch, but he was very synonymous to a monarch. Yeah, this is going to be a 2-parter, and we're going to break it into the first part, kind of like how like the French Revolution kind of was a dumpster fire in that, they purposely put in a guy into a position that France actively tried to vow never to have again. And then the second part is like all of Napoleon's, because, hey, you can say what you want about the guy. He was a brilliant tactician, and he just knew how to read a battlefield better than anybody else. And he was very, very good with artillery. And he was a fantastic tactician. And the second part is going to be like, hey, I'm this emperor now. I'm going to take out Russia. And the invasion of Russia is quite possibly one of the most disastrous military campaigns in human history. Like, he walked into Russia with over 600,000 soldiers, and literally only 100,000 made it out. And out of those 100,000, only like 20,000 were fit to fight.
One does not simply just walk into Russia.
Well, Napoleon did, and he actually did very well-ish at first.
Compared to the other guys who tried it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, he actually took Moscow and all that stuff. The issue was that he was fighting a very different war than what the Russians were fighting. And that's a very weird statement that will make sense in part 2. But first, let's kind of dive into Napoleon's life a little bit. One of the interesting things I always found about Napoleon was that he wasn't actually French. He
was Italian.
Yeah, he's Italiano. Yeah, he was born on the island of Corsica on August 15th, 1769. So his whole family was Italian. And his father, Carlo Bonaparte, fought for the Corsican freedom from France. So like, his family fought for its own like separation from France. But then like Carlo became friends with the French governor, Charles Louis de Marbeuf. Yeah, I butchered that.
Good. Hey, better than what I could do.
Yeah, so it's not Charles Louis de Marbeuf. Charles. You have to say it as Charles. Yeah, it's. Did you know there was a French king named Charles who thought that he was made of glass?
Yes. There's also an English king who thought he was made of glass. I believe he was also a Charles.
Okay. That would make sense. There was a time when all the kings were French.
That was during the 100 Years' War. So
okay.
They were fighting against the French.
Yeah. It gets very confusing. So, yeah, Bonaparte's dad, Carlo, kind of befriended the French governor. And because of this, he was kind of like Carlo Bonaparte was kind of protected. And it's almost as though like Carlo saw like this whole Corsican revolution or rebellion or whatnot wasn't going very well. So Carlo kind of like picked the side that he thought was going to win. And as a result, he picked the right side. But then obviously there was no home for the Bonapartes in Corsica because like they kind of viewed him as a bit of a turncoat. But because of this friendship with the governor, Napoleon was basically put into a military academy. He didn't even know French. So he was in like junior high or high school or the equivalency of, and he only spoke Italian and he had to learn French very, very fast. And of course, he was picked on because he didn't look French, whatever that means. I don't know what the French look looks like or the Italian look, but maybe they could tell. So yeah, he when he was 9, he enrolled into a religious school, and then eventually, like when he became fluent in French, which when you're 9, you can learn it really, really fast. He moved into the Briand-le-Château, which is a boys' military school. And for the most part, like he was very studious. He wasn't very outgoing. He just kept to himself. And he excelled in history, math, geography, literature, and anything else, like engineering, like anything that was deemed academic. He was a bookworm. And he just studied everything. When you don't have friends, you tend to read a lot. In 1784, he transferred to the École Militaire, where he was trained as a military officer. He graduated from that. I think it was like in 1785. He became a second lieutenant. And by the time the French Revolution broke out in 1789, he was like, 19, 20 years old. And he saw France completely, the whole monarchy, just fall apart overnight. And he was trying to figure out what to do, how to make a name for himself and all that. So he tried to like go back to Corsica and try to like patch things up there. And the guy, his name was Paoli. He was the guy that was leading like the Corsican Revolution, who got stamped down, but by this time he was still kind of a prominent figure. Napoleon was going to go there and try to like patch things up. Of course, Paoli was like, get out of here. Like, you turncoat, you are not welcome here. In fact, all of the Bonaparte family was not welcome. And all the leaders got together and condemned the Bonapartes, and the family had to flee, right? So imagine getting out of college, going back home, finding out that nobody likes you, and you have to leave literally like in the course of a night, and you are being chased out for fear of death to go back into a country that has no government, and people are getting their heads lopped
Not
off
yet.
left and right. Yeah, true.
But yeah,
Yes,
that's aside from the point. That's a fun thing.
Yeah, once we do away with like timeline stuff, it all happened at once when you get rid of time. 1793, the Bonaparte family had to obviously move out of Corsica. So I think by now, King Louis was dead,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, he was in the southern town of Toulon, or Toulon if you're American. At that time, he was a light colonel or a lieutenant colonel, and he was approached by, well, this convention, or better yet, what would be known as the Directory. And he was approached by these guys, and it's like, hey, dude, thanks for siding with the revolution. So Napoleon picked the right side there. That's got to be scary. When you really think about it, when you have random people that you don't know necessarily, or you don't know their allegiance, and they're coming up to you and then asking you, like, what side are you on? And you just have to guess because you don't know.
50-50 shot.
Yeah, it's to me that's scary. They're like that movie Civil War that came out last year. There's a scene in there where, like, you as the viewer, you have no idea who's who. You really don't. And the main characters are asked all the time, what side are you on? And if they didn't guess right, they could get themselves shot. So that's got to be kind of intimidating to live in a world like that, where, hey, if you're just like a peasant farmer or whatnot, like, I don't think that had much to do with you. But if you're a lieutenant colonel and you did not pick the right side, yeah, you could be in trouble. But anyways, as a lieutenant colonel, he was approached and by the director, and they're like, hey, thanks for sticking with us. Do you want to take on a command? And this is where Napoleon set himself apart. Basically, Toulon was a port in the Mediterranean, like in the southern part of France. And how do I want to word this? It's funny because the British had taken it over. All right, there was a garrison of, I think, 15 or 20,000 British troops or Marines bunkered in this fortress in Toulon, and it was used to offload and load British ships, like, because, at this time in British history or European history, Britain was the world superpower when it came to the Navy. They just had, like, it seemed like unlimited ships. So Toulon was taken over, and Toulon, basically, and I think you mentioned it in your episodes, Kara, where, hey, King Louis was kind of taken down, but other monarchs in Europe wanted him reinstated.
Yeah.
Even though they could have been like conflicting, they, like, a monarch will support a monarch.
Yeah, they were worried that revolutionary ideas would reach them, and then they were afraid for their own position at that point.
Yeah, and it's also, too, from a strategic standpoint, it probably just works out better. Like, hey, I know what this one guy is going to do versus, say, like, 5 guys.
Yeah.
Right? So, Britain obviously wanted King Louis put back in, and they took over this port, and this was going to be a staging ground in case Britain needed to get more and more involved with getting the royal family brought back in and whatnot. So clearly if you were on the revolutionary side, you really didn't want a massive British presence in the southern end of your country. So they gave Napoleon an impossible task. Basically, they said, hey, do whatever you got to do, take Toulon. And Napoleon's like, okay. And this is part of his genius. This is what I got to give him credit for. He's like, like everybody in the directory, they're all arguing and bickering and what they're supposed to do, who's supposed to take what, how are they going to chase all these guys out. Meanwhile, Napoleon's like, guys, just take out the ships. You sink the British ships, then that garrison has nowhere else to go. And they'll have no choice but to surrender. So, all right, fine. If you think you make it work, make it work. So that's what he did. He got there months earlier and he just hung out. Like he just observed, and he would dress himself up as a peasant, and that way he could travel. He could travel the streets and all that stuff. And the first thing he did was he started scouring the countryside looking for cannons. And he found a whole bunch of cannons, and then he tore them all down. So he found a bunch of cannons that were just laying out in these fields, and he had them brought back, and they melted the cannons down, and they made a whole bunch of smaller cannons, like a cannon that could fit on somebody's back. It would probably still weigh like 100 pounds, but a buff dude could carry it up a ladder.
Nice.
So yeah, it's like, what are you doing? Like, what? Okay, fine, whatever. In the meantime, he was taking French troops and having them dress up as just average folks so that the British wouldn't be any the wiser to it. And it kind of helped too that he knew Toulon because him and his family had been living there for a hot minute from being chased out of Corsica. And what he did one night is he dressed up like in full French military regalia. He sent his men out with a couple of like giant kegs of gunpowder, and they went to this fortress that the British had taken over, and they positioned these kegs of gunpowder against like the thinner parts of the walls. And in the middle of the night, those kegs were lit, and it was like Helm's Deep. Remember that scene from the Two Towers? Helm's Deep.
Oh, it's been a long time.
Remember how they broke in? How the orcs or the Uruk-hai broke into Helm's Deep?
Nope.
Really?
It's been a long time.
Yeah. It's one of the most iconic scenes in the whole movie. And what it was is the Uruk-hai, they couldn't penetrate these walls because they were like 20 feet thick. So they ran in a whole bunch of explosives into like the waterway that drained out from underneath Helm's Deep. And then they took like an orc, gave him this torch, and just ran him inside. And then he lit the powder on fire, and then boom, it just blew open all of Helm's Deep.
Got it.
It kind of makes me wonder if J.R.R. Tolkien took inspiration from something when writing that.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah. So he, in the middle of the night, blew the crap out of this whole garrison, which then the British were like, what in the world is going on? By the time the British even realized what was happening, the French already had ladders in place, and they were scouring up to the rooftop of the garrison, and they brought these cannons with them, these smaller cannons. And the goal was this: you're not going to outnumber the British. You're not going to even outfire them in terms of their Marines are highly trained. And, you know, if you squared up to them like phalanx to phalanx kind of fighting, Napoleon would have lost. Instead, what they did is they rushed through the roof. They shot anybody that got in their way. And they then turned the big cannons around, and there was probably 24, I believe, 24 or 30 giant cannons. Like these things had like cannons that could shoot cannonballs like 8 inches in diameter, as well as explosive charges and whatnot. So these cannons were pointed out towards the north, towards the countryside, waiting for a French incursion to take place. Napoleon was like, nope, turn them around, turn all the cannons around. We want to face everything, all the cannons need to face the ports. And he used those smaller cannons that they melted down and made to fit on a soldier's back. They used the smaller ones and they filled it with a substance called hot shot. And this was kind of like a Spanish design. The Spanish were notorious for this, and it was kind of a douchebaggy method. It wasn't an honorable way to fight a naval battle, but Napoleon wasn't fighting a naval battle. Hot shot basically is when you fire it, it's like a shotgun on steroids, but the projectiles that are coming out of it are on fire.
Sick.
And so what he did is he lined these shorter cannons up because obviously they're going to have a short reach. And he started firing this hot shot on the British ships that were docked. And it, of course, incendiary rounds on a wooden ship.
Kablooey.
Yeah. It's or at least a barbecue, right? Yeah. It's this hot shot would burn through the sails, so they couldn't even they couldn't even drop sail and try to get out of that dock. So that prevented the retreat from that aspect. And then there was a whole bunch of ships that were still in the harbor that weren't docked, and that's when he used the bigger cannons and started firing on them. And in one such ship, if you watch the Napoleon movie, they actually do a really, really good job showing you this attack. Like they were aiming and they hit the powder casings in these British ships. And you hit those powder storage rooms and it is like a nuclear bomb. That ship just vaporizes into shards of wood and splinters. And in that night, Napoleon sank like most of the ships in that harbor. The British surrendered real fast because they have nowhere to go now. And needless to say, Napoleon was kind of viewed as a hero. Like out of nowhere, he came from being a artillery officer to like, wow, this guy single-handedly took out Toulon. He was also made more famous for when he started to ride in to join the battle. Because I will give Napoleon credit. He's not afraid to get into the fight. He will get in the thick of it. He will be like the only guy on horseback fighting, which makes him an absolute target. But yeah, he wasn't afraid to do that. And when he was riding in to go climb the walls, a cannon fired off and hit his horse like right in the chest, and it exploded the horse.
I don't like that.
Yeah, and it blew Napoleon off like 5-6 feet, landed on his back, and in the process too of climbing up the ladders, he got shot in the leg. And so obviously it wasn't fatal because, well, he hangs out for a little bit, but yeah, he did all this while shot in the leg and his horse blown out from underneath him. And like there's a scene in the movie, and I kind of want to see if it's true or not, where like after he's promoted to like brigadier general the next morning, he goes up to his dead exploded horse and he reaches into the chest cavity and then he pulls out the cannonball and he wipes all the blood off of it. And then he tossed it to his brother and he's like, here, give this to mother as like a I'm safe kind of a thing. Because mothers really don't like it when their kids go off to war. And I think he had like 4 brothers and they were all in the military. Yeah, he's like, take this cannonball, give it to mother, let her know that I'm okay. It's a really,
you have to avoid the Saving Private Ryan issue.
Yes. Well, in this case, yeah, it kind of did work out in that way because the brothers were all over the place. In fact, I don't think he ever rode into any particular battle with his other brothers with him. When he invaded Russia, he had one brother, and he had him like in like fourth or fifth command, like he was way up there. But yeah, Napoleon wasn't a big fan of having all the brothers together within one burst of grape shot away of all being dead, kind of a thing. That Toulon was taken over, and now Napoleon was on a meteoric rise through the ranks. And he just continued to set him apart time and time again. 1774, the revolutionaries set up a convention. Yeah, they were going to put together this convention and try to, make things happen. They were going to put all these policies into place, and they were going to do all these reformations and all that stuff. That is a complete waste of time, and that's a different conversation. However, though, there were a loyalist or the royalists, one of the two. Basically, these were the people. Oh, yeah, the royalists. These were the people that wanted to overthrow the convention and bring back a monarchy, or at least a constitutional monarchy. And they kind of became a problem, which is the reason why after the Reign of Terror, actually during the Reign of Terror and even afterwards a little bit, like so many people were put in jail. And because they just didn't know. And if you were wealthy, it was just understood that you're probably a royalist, and they just threw you in jail. And yeah, it was kind of like, that's probably the best way. But then again, though, there was mass hysteria. I could kind of see why.
I mean, if it was during the Reign of Terror, heads are being lopped off left and right, you're probably thankful you're in a prison and not on the guillotine.
Yeah, but usually you were one step away from going to the guillotine if you were in jail.
Yeah, but it's still one step away.
Yeah. I'd rather be in that jail cell than standing on that scaffold. I have to admit that is, yeah. Not everybody wishes they were in jail, but that would be a time where, okay, I'm good where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, it's not great. It's not a great situation either way.
Yeah, and no matter what, dude.
If I had to choose,
and when you're in that jail cell, you do not make a scene. Like,
no, you do what you're told, and you're quiet, and you suck it up.
Down with the king, down with monarchy, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people switch sides pretty fast. And wasn't there a great deal or a number of people originally, like they were wealthier, almost like politicians that helped overthrow the monarchy?
Yeah, the bourgeoisie.
Yeah,
the entire aristocracy that belonged to the peasant class, essentially.
Okay, so these are
merchants, traders.
Okay, so these weren't like dukes and stuff like that, but these were very wealthy people in society.
Yeah, correct. Because at this time period, we're starting to get people who are making a lot of money off of their trade or off of what they are trading. And they're starting to get to a point where they can buy their way into nobility.
Got it. Okay. And so the people put their faith in them because they kind of came from the streets. They came from the average folk and worked their way up.
Yeah, like they felt that they had a better understanding of what was going on because they weren't in Versailles, they were in Paris, so they were a lot closer. So they're not nobility, but they're still rich.
Okay.
So
got it. Okay. So
yeah,
August of 1795, they call it the convention. I think it was really the directory, but this was basically a meeting of them trying to fix France and all this other crap. But they got downwind that there was going to be a royalist overthrow, and they asked Napoleon, like, "Hey, bro, can you use your men and stop this from happening? Like, if obviously we don't want to kill a bunch of people in the streets if we don't have to, but maybe just stand out there and look tough, right?" And Napoleon's like, "I don't have to dedicate any of my soldiers for this cause." And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, give me a handful of cannons, I'll take care of it. And that's what he did. He set up cannons outside of the government building, and they were all filled with grape shot. I have in my notes here, like I have it squared off, highlighted in brackets, like take a few minutes to go over canister and grape shot. So grape shot is, both of them are very similar. Canister and grape shot are very, very similar, and they are absolutely horrific inventions of humanity. Basically, a grape shot is where you take these mini cannonballs. They're probably about an inch to 2 inches in diameter. And then you basically loosely tie them together. And so you go like maybe 5-6 rows deep. And then each row would have like 3-4 of these cannonballs in there stacked up. So you could have like 24 of these cannonballs, and you would fire them out of the cannon, and it's like a crazy version, an overkill version of a shotgun. These things are flying at you, 3,000 to 4,000 feet per second, and they will go through you. They will go through the person behind you, and the person behind them, and the horse that could be back there as well. And they would hit with such force. Yeah, it could just split you in twain.
I was going to say, grape shot's scary because all the weight that's held by the little grape balls, and then you have that line that just cuts through everything between that.
Yeah, and I think canister shot is even scarier. So like when you think of grape shot, you always think of like those little miniature, like a whole bunch of those tiny little mini balls that are like a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch in diameter.
I think of the string that hold them together.
Okay, yeah,
that's what I think
that
about.
is a true grape shot, is where it's a bigger cannonball, and it's like an inch to 2 inches in diameter, and there's probably 24 of them that are loosely held together. Canister shot is, imagine like taking a soup can and then filling it full of little lead balls. And I think muskets back then, I think they were a 68 caliber, meaning that they were 0.68 inches in diameter, so a little bigger than a 1/2 inch. And they would take like 50 or 60 of these bullets, and then they would put them in a can, and they would, obviously ram a whole bunch of gunpowder in there, and then they would take these soup cans full of the bullets, run them into the cannon, and fire that into the crowd.
So essentially a grenade.
Yeah, much, much bigger and a lot more spread.
Yeah.
Like grape shot was absolutely devastating, but it was more focused. Whereas a canister could take out, like a 75 to 100 yard swath of people, but they wouldn't penetrate as far. Whereas like grape shot had a very narrow range, like it only take out like 10 feet, but it would go like 3-4 people deep. Whereas the canister would only go maybe 1 or 2 rows deep, but it's like a 75 yard wide spread. So either way, horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, horrible stuff. And Napoleon had his cannons loaded with that, and the crowd came up. The crowd started throwing rocks. They wanted the king back. And then Napoleon's like, just fire. And a couple shots of this stuff, and literally like hundreds of men, women laying in the streets, blown to pieces, bleeding out. A lot of them were still alive, and they slowly died. But it was such a horrific event that left such a bad taste in people's mouths. They're like, yeah, we're not doing this again. Like, this was kind of like the end of Napoleon's involvement with, like, a direct involvement with the French Revolution. So like here now, if you wanted more details in terms of like what went on during the revolution, especially after King Louis died, like this is where you'd probably want to listen to the previous episodes because it gets really wacky. It seemed like every week there was a different government going into effect.
Yeah, it's kind of like that weird that weird in between stage between World War I and World War II in Germany, where the Reichstag is taken down and then put back up, and then taken down, put back up again. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, it's like they couldn't make up their minds, or no, they would make up their minds and then quickly change their minds. I feel like. yeah, no, it worked out great for them. Yeah, they eventually figure it out. Meanwhile, America is just
they eventually figure it out.
Yeah, we just had an election. It was weird, but we're okay. Because, in the 1790s, America, 1797, that's where we're getting up to here is, America was just had the Constitution written. They were in the Articles of Confederation, which was a disaster. That would be a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
The Articles of Confederation, like it meant well, but just it wasn't enough. So yeah, like in America, it was actually all things considered pretty peaceful. But because of this little escapade, the Royalist uprising was kind of put down for the foreseeable future. And now the director is like, okay, we've got Napoleon in our back pocket. Let's use it to our advantage. So they gave him the army of Italy, because I didn't know this prior to studying this, but like France really had a lot of control of Italy prior to all this. So that would make sense, right? Because Napoleon was born and pretty much raised or not raised, but he was born in Corsica, and they were fighting for their independence from France. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically Napoleon was given 20,000 men to fight Austria, because Austria wanted to get into Italy. And it's just like everybody just wanted to attack everybody, it seemed like. And while he was over there, he started to notice, or not notice, but he started to really explore like statecraft, right? He started to see that, hey, if they're sending me over to stop this uprising or stop this country, and now I have to reconstitute the land. So basically think like like the war on terrorism, right? America comes in and they take over Afghanistan in like a week, and then they take out Iraq in a little longer than a week. And yes, the terrorists are still there, but the Americans are still fighting them and defeating them pretty readily. But then there's a point where America now has to reconstitute that land. You've got to set up a new government in there that, one, is going to favor America, and two, be stable enough to kind of like control everything. And this is where Napoleon, he got involved with that. And he kind of learned how to deal with taxes, and how do you fund militaries, and how do you manage economies, and how do you keep your people fed. And in the process of doing all this, he, especially in Italy, he kind of learned like this isn't that difficult. If you figure out a way to get goods into your country and you keep your people working and making money, they'll like you. This isn't rocket science. Like, why did King Louis not figure this out? Like,
because I have no excuses for that, man.
Yeah.
I will say it wasn't entirely his fault.
So, yep, Napoleon was figuring out statescraft. He was figuring out how to run a country. It's like, this is easier than people thought. So one of the things that, I don't know if you knew this about European history, Kara, but the French and the British fought a lot. I know. It's a little known thing in history that the British and the French often did not get along.
What?
Yeah. It's wild. I know. It's just
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know it's late, and if you are
really
just now finding out about this and you're like 8 or 9, that's okay. If you're older than say 15 and
no,
this
that's
is
fine.
new to you,
Let's read some books.
yeah,
Watch some YouTube documentaries.
yeah.
Let's get at it.
Yeah, put Fortnite down and let's get to work. So yes, the trend of always fighting each other, or the British and the French fighting each other, that continued even into the 1800s, and Napoleon was trying to figure out a way to fight the British, and he came up with a bit more favorable idea. Right? There is no way or no way that France was going to hop into a bunch of boats and just go take England.
That's not going to happen.
No, even in World War II, Hitler could bomb all he wanted, and he just didn't have the ability to take that island. So what Napoleon decided to do is like, okay, let's fight the British, but let's hit them where it hurts. Let's hit them in the economic aspects. And this is where the campaign of Egypt starts. And the idea was, hey, I'm going to show up into Cairo and I'm going to be like a savior. And I'm going to be the Egyptian savior. And my goal is to push out the evil British Empire and restore order in the chaos and make it so that the Egyptians would love France and trade with them rather than the British. He goes there and he does. He comes in almost like Jesus in a way. And he found that obviously the side of the Egyptian side that favored Britain is like this is like no contest, like one cannon, and it freaks everybody out. And no, it is a myth. Napoleon did not do target practice on the pyramids. Okay, that's not the reason why the pyramids look the way they do. The reason why they look the way they do is because a lot of the stones that were used to build that nice shell on the outside were used for other construction purposes. So that was more like recycled than anything. But no, it is a myth that Napoleon shot the crap out of the pyramids. But he did kind of get himself into a little bit of a military stalemate. And yeah, in a way, Egypt was it was kind of like a dumpster fire. And he was almost, I don't want to say like he was looking for a reason to leave, but yeah, it wasn't going the way he thought it was. And Napoleon is very much a battlefield leader. Give me an army and then give me an army to attack, and I will be victorious. But if I've got an army and I'm dealing with a very complicated economics / political / religious scene, like he couldn't navigate it. He just rode the struggle bus on that.
He's a checkers guy, not a chess guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a good way of putting it. So like when word kind of came out to him that his wife, Josephine, let's just say she wasn't being very faithful.
Okay.
So Josephine was like his best friend, and even after their marriage fell apart, they were still very, very good friends. The problem with Josephine is that she could not seem to get pregnant. And here we go again, like this whole idea that you have to have a boy in order to carry the line, and blah 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 blah. It's just
it continues on and on and on. It is what it is.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but I've even kind of seen that a little bit to this day. Like, you know, when I had both my daughters, they're like, "Oh, sorry, didn't you want a boy?" I don't care. what I have. Like, I'm not going to live my life like, man, I would give anything to I'll trade these two girls in for a boy. You're like, no, that's not how I'm going to play. That's just too antiquated for me.
That's fair.
So yeah, he found out about his wife being unfaithful, and he immediately returned to Paris. And technically, he abandoned his post. Like, yeah, he didn't finish the job, and it's not like the directory called him in. Like, yeah, what he did was kind of a court-martialable offense. And when he got there, the director was obviously pissed, but he's like, guys, what is going on here? And they're like, well, we need to court-martial you because you abandoned your post. And he's like, okay, I left France in a state of chaos, but it was being governed in a way that we would get through the chaos. I come back and it's worse than it was before. And so instead of like being worried about being court-martialed, he just like teed off on the directory and basically said, you guys can't court-martial me because you're failing literally to everything that you're doing.
You have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, it's like, I refuse to be court-martialed by people that are this incompetent. He didn't quite realize that, hey, when you've had a monarchy for hundreds of years, it's going to be a process of converting that over. But again, Napoleon just had a way of just getting straight to the heart of the matter and fixing crap. So instead of being court-martialed, he played up the fact that he was in all the French newspapers and that people loved him. He was considered a war hero, and the average people just loved Napoleon.
Propaganda. Gotta love it. My favorite thing is if you look up the French propaganda, he's like super awesome, and he's big, and he's rich, and he's powerful. And then if you look at the British propaganda,
short,
he's little, and he's tiny.
Yeah,
and
tyrannical.
He's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, because neither one is accurate.
No.
it's something in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. It's so great.
Yeah, no, it is pretty funny to see that. And it's kind of like you see it today where certain political figures are like, nailed to a cross, and they're like, no, that's not how that works. Or like you see those other, like, they're almost like memes, but you see like a George Washington riding a griffin with a machine gun in one hand and an American flag in the other hand, and he's got like a six-pack, and he's just ripped, and it's just like
Abe Lincoln Zombie Killer.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
that was a fun movie. I'm not gonna knock that movie.
Really? I've never.
It was so dumb, but entertaining.
Yeah, the book was pretty good.
I think it was it Zombie Killer or Vampire Killer? I don't know. Either one.
It was Vampire.
It was Vampire.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's so stupid, but it's entertaining.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like the book had a lot more meaning to it, whereas the movie was just
Abe Lincoln killing vampires,
chopping up vampires. Yeah,
that's it.
It's like Abe Blade Lincoln. That's what it was.
Yeah, there you go.
So
anyway,
yeah, so basically, instead of getting court-martialed, he just walked out of that directory room, and he just relied on the will of the people, and he started getting stuff done. He decided to hang out in like their parliament. He started to hang out in their committee meetings. He started to get involved with all these discussions. And he would just be like, instead of like you and I, like we would see something like this and we just kind of stay to the side and not want to draw attention to ourselves. Napoleon would be like, whoa, wait, what? No, just stop talking. We're going to do it this way. And a lot of times his way works. Like, yeah, he did solve a lot of the problems. He created some, as we will get into here shortly, but yeah, like he just had a knack for getting into the heart of the matter and just fixing it. And eventually he got the attention of the people so much that he's like, okay, let's do away with the directory. And he actually used the military for this. Basically, he staged a coup in November of 1799. And yeah, he used the military, and he had the directory. At that time, what was left of them, he had them all arrested or kicked out. And it wasn't a bloodbath. He was real big on that. Like, no, we're not pulling out the guillotine. We're not going to be executing everybody. I'm eliminating the inefficiencies, and I am going to put in, instead of having like 5-6 people run the show, we'll just have 3. And these 3 will be known as consuls, because Napoleon was really, really, really a fan of the Roman Empire. And it's same thing with Hitler. He wanted to like recreate that Roman Empire and the glory that came with all those military conquests and all that kind of stuff. And he also loved the order that it brought with it for when it worked ish, sort of.
For what it worked.
Yeah.
To be fair, it was around for a while.
Yes, it was. It was also a republic and then turned into an empire. And yeah. What it is so fascinating to think, like, the Romans were around for what, almost 1,000 years?
Yeah. Are you going to count the Byzantine Empire too?
No, I'm just talking about up to when it officially collapsed. What was it?
Up to 479.
479, yeah. And then it started at around 700.
So a little less than 1,000 years, if my math is right.
Yeah, so about 800 years.
But if you count the Eastern Roman Empire, it was around for more than 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what you want to count.
Yeah, how you want to define it. Yeah, I can see that. But like, when you think about it, America has been around for what? 250 years?
Ish.
240 years?
Somewhere around there. It's late. I don't want to math.
To me, it's just fascinating. Like, oh yeah, America's been around for such a long time. Like,
no,
I don't know, man. Like, Egypt was around for thousands of years. Like,
if you want to, listeners, if you want to see a society or a civilization that has been around forever, look up the ancient Egyptian timeline. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's wild. And the Chinese history is just
like, ancient China is up there too.
Yeah. So nuts. I don't know. To me, I just find it fascinating. Like, oh yeah, America has been around longer than everybody else. Like, no, it hasn't. It's
Who says that? I've never heard anybody say that.
It's because our government is so stable. So if, like, okay, by definition, like when Queen Elizabeth died and her son took over, that is actually a change of government.
It's still the same type of government, though. It's
still the same type, but it is a change of government.
I guess it depends on how you want to look at it.
Yeah. So, like, in terms of, like, America's democracy, it has actually been around longer than any other developed nation.
I don't know. The historian in me wants to really hard pass disagree.
Oh, this is from historians. So,
well, meaning like there are countries that are older than America just because the change of government happens.
Well, yeah, there's countries older than America, but that doesn't mean they've had the same democratic government from the beginning.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the age of the country.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. You can have, and that I'm not talking about America has been around longer than anybody else. I'm saying that the government that America has in place has been around longer than most other countries.
Oh, that's where I got confused. I was like, who? What?
Yeah, no. Like America, and even I think Britain and France would see it's like America is like a puppy. Like, yeah, guys, we've been around since like the Roman times. Like, we don't want to hear it. But no, what I'm talking about is like the government itself has been pretty stable all things considered,
Got it.
for a
Okay.
very long time.
Now I'm with you. That really took me a second.
Okay. So back to Napoleon. He basically staged a military coup in 1799, and he got rid of the directory, and he basically set up a consul, and he kind of wanted to style it off of the whole Roman Empire thing. So much so that when they had him and then they had two other guys as consuls, but Napoleon was like, I'm doing air quotes, voted in as like first consul. And the first consul would be in charge of the military. And the public wanted that. And when you have the military like that, you're kind of the one who's in charge of everything. It was Napoleon that kind of had the real power, and the other two, the second and third consuls, were kind of like, I don't know, they were kind of just like along for the ride. It's kind of like whenever you watch, I love watching video feeds of like the North Korean government. So you got like Kim Jong-un sitting at the very front on this table, and then like their general assembly has like 1,000 guys in it, and they all are voting on some law that Kim Jong-un introduces, and like, oh yeah, it's a unanimous approval. Like, no, I don't think that's legitimate. We're kind of like when Putin gets reelected term after term after term with like a 99.8% approval rating.
Doesn't add up. It's
yeah,
fine.
it just that doesn't scream democracy to me.
No, not at all. It doesn't add up at all. But
and that's kind of how Napoleon got in.
Okay.
yeah. So like that was he said that everybody voted for him. Yeah, it was. Let's just face it. It was.
You're really selling him to me right now, because I'm not his biggest fan.
Oh, and I'm really gonna irritate you now, because he did make a lot of changes to the judicial system, right? Like nominating judges, streamlining laws. He did do a lot of set up schools. He wanted everybody to be educated. Like there was a lot of stuff that he did.
Schools for boys.
That was pretty cool, unless you were a girl. So yeah, if you were a girl, like you had no rights. Women couldn't vote. They had no say in a marriage. Like they could not turn down their husbands. So if husband wanted to get it on that night, she couldn't say no. And if she did say no, then well, she could be put in jail. They couldn't decide on if they were going to have kids or not. They had no say in the raising of the kids. So husband decided if they were going to go to school or not. Husband decided who was going to stay at home or who was going to leave. Like wife had no say in any of that. And it got so crazy that like infidelity, right? So if a woman was caught cheating on her husband, like the hammer came down and she would just be absolutely destroyed. However, though, it was accepted that a husband could bring home a side piece, and this woman could even live in their house, and the wife couldn't say anything.
I'm not impressed.
So, yeah. Yeah, like it's one of those things. It's like, man, he did a lot, but then, like, why did you have to ruin it with this?
Yeah, and the hard thing too is I can't stand the guy. I really don't like him. But I also really try hard to not look at people's decisions through a contemporary lens.
Mm-hmm.
Despite that, still don't like him.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
hard. It's hard to get past that. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm the kind of guy that like look at even the worst leaders. They had something to offer, but it just seems like, man, why? Like you, if you just kept going with all your reforms and didn't tarnish it with like your treatment of women, yeah, like you probably would have gone down as a beloved hero of Europe. Instead, yeah, you're kind of viewed as a tyrant
Did eh.
with with a bit of a complex towards women. So
Yeah. He's got some things to work through.
yeah, well, I mean, thankfully he was very rarely ever in France for that long of a time. Most of it, he like, well, okay, in 1804, December 2nd, 1804, he was consecrated as the Emperor of France by Pope Pius VII. And yes, it is true that the Pope went to crown him, and Napoleon took the crown out of the Pope's hand and he put the crown on his own head. And he's like, now I am the emperor. Like, I picked this crown up off the ground, I dusted it off. France is back, and we are now forced to be reckoned with. And this is all primarily because as much as of a like a politician that he tried to be, he went first and foremost, he was a military commander. That was his thing. And the Roman emperor in him basically said, okay, now that I'm the emperor, now I need to take over all of Europe. And
this always goes well.
This always goes well. And actually for a long time it does kind of go well. From 1804 to 1812 is what is known as the Napoleonic Wars. And this was just one massive victory after another. And like a lot of Europe still like disliked him, like Prussia, I think Warsaw. Then you had the Austrian Empire. Like there was a lot of countries that were kind of mostly would be classified as Germany when they all united. But he realized, or I don't think he realized it, but he's just like, okay, cool. I'm now the emperor. I finally have got France under control. Now let's take over the rest of Europe, and basically let's turn Europe into one unified country. And this one unified country could refuse to trade with England, and then England would have no choice but to starve to death. That it was called the Continental System, and that's what he tried to put in place to try to get all of Europe on one page. Oh, that didn't work out so well, as we will see when he tries to take out Russia. But in the meantime, the Napoleonic Wars, this is where he was at his height. And the only way to really keep his fame and all this stuff, because he really didn't like the politics and just sitting around dealing with stuffy old men in wigs. And I guess he got bored of mistreating women. He decided to go back out and unify all of Europe. So most of his enemies, and what's funny, these enemies would later become his allies. And again, I put that in air quotes because it's really hard to like absolutely decimate and conquer somebody and then expect them to be your ally afterwards. As we will see with like Austria, Russia, Prussia, the works. And his biggest threat was Britain. And what Napoleon wanted to do was unify Russia, Austria, and Prussia, and even Spain. He wanted to just unify all these major areas, and that would then put him in a position where he could go to Britain and really, really hurt them, at least economically.
I like how this whole thing is because he wanted to stick it to Britain.
Well, I mean,
I know he really wanted the power, but it just the way you put it sounded pretty funny. We're gonna go through all these things just to stick as Britain.
I mean, what else are you gonna do?
We're gonna rule Europe like Charlemagne did before all these countries were countries.
Well, yeah, and he did actually do, like I said, he did do a lot. Like he set up universities, he set up schools, he set up like the idea that hey, religion can be practiced outside of government. Like you don't have to have the two intertwined.
That was like going on before him.
Yes,
there were universities before him.
Yes, but they were the same ones that had been around for decades to centuries. He built new ones, and he wanted more development, so to speak. Whereas, you know, even in the 1800s, a lot of Europe was like, hey, the ones who get educated are the rich, and the wealthy can get educated. Napoleon was a firm believer in that. Now, a lot of people, anybody should really be getting an education. And I think that was a Thomas Jefferson in him, because Thomas Jefferson, I think, was the guy that really started the French Revolution with this talk of
Thomas Paine.
Well, yeah.
Before Jefferson.
Yeah. Yeah. But Jefferson, remember, he spent a lot of time in France and filled their heads with, you know, revolution and a better life and this and that. And that's a whole different story. But yeah, no, you're right. There's a lot of stuff that was going well beforehand and that they didn't necessarily need him. But again, Napoleon was the kind of guy that wanted to speed things up. And what happens to history whenever you get a guy with too much military power who wants to speed things up?
Usually they're super, super successful, and then they bite off more than they can chew, and then they crash and burn.
Yeah, and then you end up on this podcast.
Yeah.
So to kind of just go over a few things of the Napoleonic Wars, 1805, October 21st, is the Battle of Trafalgar. Epic naval battle. This was the largest naval battle in the world up to this point. This is the battle that established Britain as the world's #1 oceanic superpower. And after this battle, this is the one with Horatio Nelson, and outnumbered and all that kind of stuff. Nelson just absolutely destroyed the French fleet, and it was a disaster for Nelson because he died during this. But it basically established the fact in Napoleon's head that, like, okay, we are not like me as the Emperor of Europe. I am not going to beat Britain in the ocean. And so he kind of gave up on the idea of a navy, and he's just like, okay, the only way I'm going to be able to get to Britain is I have to starve them out by unifying all of Europe on land. So I could kind of see the strategy there, and it would probably work if he just went about it in a little more diplomatic way. So yeah, Battle of Trafalgar, fascinating battle. If you're a naval history naval nerd like me. 1805, December 2nd, probably one of Napoleon's most insane victories. He had 68,000 troops, and they absolutely decimated 90,000 Russian and Austrian troops. He split the Allied line in two and used artillery masterfully to victory. So it was like a 3-4 day long battle. If you watch the Napoleon movie, probably the what you see in the Battle of Austerlitz was like the final day. And he hid his artillery, he hid his men underneath like white tarps and all that stuff. And it was in the snow and nobody could see anything. And he used lanterns to like send coded messages all over the place. So basically what he did is he waited for the Russian and the Austrians to think that they had the upper ground and attack him. And in doing so, he was able to surround them while he was on the true upper ground. And then he sent in his cavalry, absolutely just caused mayhem. And suddenly the Russian and Austrian line started to break up. They started to retreat. And probably what is most famous out of this whole thing was he used his cannons knowing that the Austrians and the Russians were running over a frozen lake. And so he used his cannons as they were retreating. He used the cannons to just break up the ice, and the entire army basically sank. And they were cut off. There was no way they could retreat. The only thing they could do was surrender. This is where Austria then became a part of Napoleon, as well as Russia became a part of Napoleon's economic or continental system by destroying them and invading them. So this is where the Treaty of Pressburg formed, and it forced Austria and Prussia to be a part of France. Not that they wanted to be a part of it, they were forced into it. October 14th, 1806. This is the Jena and Auerstadt fought in modern-day Germany. 122,000 French defeated 114,000 Prussian and Saxon troops, which resulted in the Treaty of Tilsit and Prussia losing half of its territory. So, yes, you have Austerlitz, which kind of put Prussia in a slight bind. Austria was worse off, but now Prussia was they lost half of the land to France. Now it wasn't even Prussian land, it was now France's land. It wasn't Prussian that is aligned with France. No, it's Prussia's cut in half, and these are now Frenchmen that live there, kind of a thing. This is where we also were Hitler. Oh my gosh, I combine the two all the time. This is where Napoleon was introduced to Tsar Alexander I of Russia. And he was kind of a boy, sort of very inexperienced. And Napoleon thought that this guy would be a pushover. This would bite him in the butt later on. June 14th, 1807, you've got the Battle of Friedland, right? Second battle that led to the Treaty of Tilsit. So you have Jena and Auerstadt, and then you have Friedland. These two kind of combined that formed the Treaty of Tilsit. 80,000 French, Polish, Dutch, Italian, and German versus 58,000 Russians. The treaty formed a shaky alliance between France and Russia, and Napoleon awarded the treaty to unify Europe and blockade Britain. So the idea was that, okay, we are now going to, now that I defeated you, you are now going to be my ally. And the relationship with Russia was very, very sketchy. The Russian people did not like this agreement, and it really put Russia in a tough spot because they wanted to trade with England. That's how they made their money, was trading with England. And this is where they had most of their livelihood, was trading with England. And now Napoleon told Russia, nope, you can't trade with England anymore. In fact, nobody in Europe can trade with England, which was funny because everybody did anyways. Why? Well, because Napoleon didn't have a navy that could fully blockade all of Europe. So it's one of those things where, fine, we won't trade with England. And then, hey, captain of such and such ship, when you go out there, change your flag to say something else. And that way, if a French ship saw them, they weren't Russian. They're somebody else. So it was one of those things it was like the 55 mile an hour speed limit where nobody followed it. But yeah, this whole thing, if you really followed it carefully, the Russians were really screwed, right? At least, Prussia and Austria, Warsaw, Spain, Italy, all these other lands, they could trade with each other, but a lot of them didn't. A lot of Europe kind of treated Russia as like these weird outcasts. A one way you could look at it is if you watch the Game of Thrones series or read the books, the Russians are very much like the North. They're very independent. They do their own thing. They don't really want to be involved with everybody else. The rest of Europe kind of viewed Russia as like, yeah, you're a part of Europe, but you're also like way out in the fringe. So it's not like Russia was thoroughly embraced into European zeitgeist, if that makes sense. It's not like they went out of the way to include Russia. And they were now put into a very tough spot where their money, like I think their inflation went up like 1,600%. They were running out of food. They had no supplies coming in, and they had no choice but to actually start trading with England again. And it was one of those things like, well, if Napoleon finds out, what's the worst that could happen? And Napoleon was like, okay, if Russia starts trading with England, it's going to be war. And I will go in and I will take out Russia and I will own them once and for all. And I will make my dream of conquering all of Europe, minus Spain. Spain was another one of Napoleon's dumpster fires that we could do another episode on. But this leads us up to 1812. And this is where we're going to leave off, right? The French Revolution ended in a dumpster fire by starting off as a dumpster fire and chopping off a bunch of people's heads to get rid of a king and queen and a monarchy. And now they've ended up with a king, or in this case, an emperor for life. And so it's like we've got that full revolution. And then on our next episode, we're going to look at Napoleon's cluster of an invasion that on paper looks epic. Like he had everything going for him, and he ends up with 20,000 men after losing like 700,000 in the period of like 7 weeks. That's the other thing, is this is a very, very short conflict.
I'm just saying, don't just walk into Russia.
Well, you can if you know what you're doing. And it's kind of a myth that, it was the Russian winter that killed them all. No. It's actually a very small portion of Napoleon's forces were killed by the Russian winter.
We'll get there.
Most of what killed them was disease and heat.
We'll get there.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about the invasion of Russia that we will kind of dive into. But yeah, the winter didn't help Napoleon's cause, and Russia kind of manipulated Napoleon from day one. So that will be part 2 of this cluster that we call Napoleon.
Sweet.
Yeah, now it's time to wake up, Kara. It's time to do your part now. Got housekeeping stuff?
Housekeeping.
It's God, that's too much Valium.
I did draw a blank. Okay. If you have an episode idea, you can either text us on that nifty text thingy bobber. You can email us at thedaysdumpsterfire@gmail.com, or you can message us on Instagram at thedaysdumpsterfire. Either one. Also, if you could leave a review for us on wherever you listen to the podcast, that would be amazing. That's very helpful to us. And that's all I got.
Yeah. Grab people's phones and
don't take it, because then you'll be arrested.
Yeah. I mean, we don't need assault and battery or anything like that, or theft, but like, hey, bring up the podcast, say that you know one, and like, some people, like you can text them like, hey, I know some podcasters I can text right now. In fact, if I wanted to, And that will be a great conversation starter. And then you're like, hey, if you want to listen to it, let me see your phone. I'll get you signed up for it. And it's really easy. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon. We're on iTunes. We are on now YouTube. We're not doing video podcasts. We're sticking straight with audio because I don't think anybody really wants to look at us talking. At least me. I just have a face for radio.
Let's just say it's 11 p.m. I'm in my jammies.
Yeah, I'm not doing much better myself. So yeah, we're not going to be doing too much video. Not to mention, I don't know how to edit video in the slightest bit. But yeah, go out there, start conversations. If you like what we do, spread the word and show people what to do, because most people probably don't even know how to get a podcast going or what to use or what's a podcatcher or anything like that. Hey, put yourself out there and let them know. If you work in an office, this would be a great opportunity because a lot of office workers like to listen to music while they're plugging away at their computers. Well, you can also have them listen to our podcast as well. So at least this way, after a long, tough day in the office, they may have learned a thing or two in the process. Yes, don't be afraid to talk to people about the episodes. You mentioned, Kara, that you can email us in ideas. I believe our fan, Nathaniel, has reached out to us with an idea. And it's some guy that I've never heard of. And I kind of want to see what this is about. Willem Barents and his mess.
Perfect. We'll look into that.
Should all do on the Dutch explorer William Barents, the third voyage, where on the good side he discovered the island of Spitsbergen in Svalbard, along with Bear Island south of the archipelago. Yeah, that cluster of islands. But on the bad side, the idiot died on while leaving the Russian Novaya Zemlya, which he discovered in his prior voyage, funnily enough, after being stranded for a year with this crew of 6. Yeah, and he really wants to hear us try to pronounce Scandinavian words.
Okay, that's fair.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, I butchered the French words, so I'm down to tackle the Scandinavian words.
So yeah, that's all I got for today. So I guess in the meantime, tell people about us and keep it a hot mess.
Thanks for listening.
Big yawn.